This is the story of Waffa, one of the most popular girls in my classroom. She was hardworking, dedicated to her education, and excelled in science. She hoped to be a doctor one day and help heal the sick, but once ISIS arrived, she was left destitute. Despite the turmoil that was taking place in her country and the growing presence of ISIS, Waffa was determined to prove that she could complete her education and be a good doctor. She studied hard, but also helped her parents where she could. Her father was a journalist in a local newspaper and had been reporting about the atrocities taking place in their country and hoped to raise awareness. As ISIS grew stronger, so did their power to stop people from reporting on their activities. ISIS began to kidnap journalists and aid workers to stop them from exposing the truth. Waffa's father and all his colleagues were kidnapped at gunpoint from their workplace, bundled into the back of trucks and taken to undisclosed location. When Waffa and her mother came to know what had happened, they were distraught. Many of their relatives had left the city from fear of ISIS, and they had no one left to turn to. As the months passed, Waffa heard more and more stories of men who were taken away and never returned. She began to believe that she would never see her father again. Under ISIS, Waffa's mother lost her job, and without an income, they began to starve. Despite being a proud woman, Waffa's mother had no choice but to beg from those more fortunate than her. Then one day, they received a letter. It demanded a large sum of money from the families of the journalists for them to be released. Waffa knew many of the families would never be able to pay such an extortionate ransom. Waffa's mother was left with no choice but to sell their home. She handed over the money to ISIS and prayed for her husband to return. Having been released from ISIS, Waffa and her mother were happy that their family were reunited. However, he was not the same man who had been taken from them. Waffa's father explained how he had been taken to a high-security prison with cameras and armed guards. He was imprisoned alongside innocent humanitarian aid workers and journalists. The captives were repeatedly submitted to mock executions and cruelly tormented by the guards. Many of the captives were executed, some beheaded, some shot. Innocent men and women unjustly sentenced to death. ISIS rejoiced that they were able to extract large sums of money from people to see their loved ones again. Yet, on many occasions, they took the money and never released the captives. Waffa's father had recurrent nightmares about his ordeal and being held in solitary confinement. He had not told his family about the full extent of his ordeal and the torture he had witnessed. Having sold their house to pay the ransom meant that Waffa and her family were now left destitute. They had no other option but to head to the border and try to rejoin family members who had left before them. Waffa did not know why they had spared her father and not others, but every day she was grateful that she was able to be with her family. Though her future remained unclear, she hoped that one day her land would be freed from the men who had snatched her home from her.